But you said it wasn't perfect. What were the main limitations or negative reactions people reported?
Yeah, despite all that praise, users definitely identified areas where it falls short or has glitches. Occasional technical errors were mentioned, things like a random animal sound appearing in one host's audio feed.
An animal sound. Okay.
Weird, right? Instances of repetition or the voices not being perfectly synchronized sometimes.
And the big one for generative AI inaccuracies. Fabricating information. Did that come up?
Unfortunately, yes. This was a significant concern raised by some users. Several reported that the AI didn't understand the paper they uploaded, or worse, started to make false statements.
Yikes.
One user just put it bluntly, it invented the content.
Yeah.
And there's a particularly troubling example mentioned. Someone uploaded investigation files about a specific real-world officer-involved shooting. The generated audio overview apparently discussed a completely different, totally hypothetical shooting incident that had nothing to do with the source material.
Wow. That specific example really highlights a critical issue. If the output isn't accurately reflecting the source material, especially for sensitive or factual topics, its utility is severely undermined. You can't trust it.
Exactly. Trust is paramount.
Mm-hmm.
Another user gave a less severe but still problematic example.
Yeah.
They uploaded a blog post where they mentioned being vegetarian and explicitly stated they did not try fried grasshoppers at some event.
Okay.
The audio overview incorrectly stated they had tried them, which suggests, potential issues with process indication or maybe just very specific factual details accurately.
So the big takeaway here is, while it can be insightful and helpful, users reported you absolutely must verify the output against your original sources, especially for factual accuracy. Don't just blindly trust it as a perfect summary.
Precisely. Verification is key. Other limitations noted were more around the level of detail and user control. Some users felt the output could sometimes be too high level, failing to emphasize crucial details or arguments from the source material. They wanted more control over the depth of discussion.
And the length of the audio, you mentioned variability earlier.
Yes, that was a consistent point of feedback. The lack of control over how long the audio overview actually is. It typically seemed to fall between maybe 6 and 15 minutes, sometimes stretching up to 25 for really big notebooks.
And no setting.
But apparently no option to set the desired time. One user who wanted a longer overview for a substantial document was disappointed to only get a 6-minute summary back. This inconsistency and inability to dictate length was a clear pain point for some.
What about the conversational style and the voices themselves? Were there criticisms there, even with the praise for realism?
Yes, there were. While the quality of the voice generation got high marks, some users found aspects of the conversational style a bit repetitive or lacking. For instance, it's always the same 2 voices, one male, one female. No option to change them.
Ah, okay.
And while the banter was sometimes appreciated, some felt there was actually too much back and forth, wishing the host would sometimes just complete longer thoughts without interrupting each other so much. Others found the phrasing kind of repetitive or formulaic. They noted recurring phrases or a predictable deep dive format. This led one user to describe the experience, in less favorable instances, as sounding like 2 people reading an AI-generated report, written by an AI that could not give 2 shits about the material itself.
Ouch. That's a really sharp contrast to the praise about realism. It suggests the experience can really fluctuate. Maybe the script generation and the delivery aren't always perfectly tuned to sound genuinely engaged.
Right. It seems the capacity for realism is definitely there, but the execution in terms of personality and flow can still sometimes hit flat notes or feel a bit artificial in its structure.
Any other recurring issues?
Difficulty with proper names was also mentioned, which, to be fair, is a general challenge for many text-to-speech systems. And, as we noted earlier, the main Notebook LM interface, the buttons and text, are currently English only, which is a barrier for non-English speakers trying to use the tool, even if the audio reviews themselves can be generated in many languages.
It's really fascinating hearing that whole spectrum of feedback, from uncanny realism and people saying family members didn't believe it was AI,
Yeah.
all the way to feeling like an indifferent AI report. It definitely underscores that this is experimental tech. Powerful, clearly, but still with significant rough edges around accuracy, control, and consistency.
Absolutely. The fact that users are even bringing up the Turing test idea, though, highlights just how effective it can be at mimicking human conversation, even with its current flaws. It's definitely pushing boundaries.
Okay, so we've explored what the audio overview is, how you generate it, what users are experiencing the wow moments and the frustrations. Now here's where it gets really interesting potentially. Based on the sources, how might this actually work under the hood? We had that one source that tried to speculate on the technical architecture.
Yes, that Substack article digging into the potential neural blueprint behind this feature. And it frames the problem really well. It's not just simple speech synthesis, converting text into a single voice.
Yeah.
It's dialogue synthesis.
Dialogue synthesis, generating a conversation between multiple distinct voices that sounds natural and consistent.
Exactly. That's a much harder challenge. It's not just a voiceover. It's simulating an actual interaction.
Right.
And the article explains that generating speech that is both realistic and meaningful requires two critical components working together: acoustic representation and semantic representation.
Okay. Acoustic representation. That sounds like the physical properties of the sound itself. Pitch, tone, that kind of thing.
That's right. Acoustic representation captures all those detailed characteristics of sound: pitch, intensity, rhythm, and intonation, what linguists call prosody. It also captures the unique qualities of a speaker's voice, their identity, and even ambient details like background noise or recording conditions. This is what makes the audio sound real and gives a voice its personality.
Got it. And semantic representation, that's the meaning.
That's where the linguistic meaning and structure come in. And this is vital because, as the article points out, without it, the output would just sound like realistic noise but would be meaningless, like a baby babbling or someone uttering gibberish, as they put it.
Right.
Semantic representation encodes the meaning of the words, how they fit into context, the intent behind what's being said, how to handle words with multiple meanings, the logical relationships between ideas. You absolutely need both: realistic sound and coherent, meaningful language for convincing dialogue.
Makes total sense. You need it to sound like a human talking, and you need that talk to actually make sense and follow a logical flow. The article also mentions some foundational technical concepts, like neural codecs.
Right. Neural codecs are presented as these advanced audio compression techniques that use neural networks. Think of them like highly intelligent data compressors.
Okay.
They learn to represent audio signals in a very efficient, compact digital format, essentially boiling down the complex sound waveform into a digital code or vector. They use neural network architectures like autoencoders or VQ-VAEs, often refined with something called residual vector quantization, RVQ, to capture the essential features of the audio. This compressed representation can then be stored, transmitted, or manipulated by other AI models much more easily, and then, crucially, reconstructed back into high-quality audio later.
So they're taking this rich, complex sound, turning it into a more manageable digital fingerprint that the AI can work with, and then turning that fingerprint back into sound.
That's a good way to put it, yeah. It's about finding an efficient digital representation that still preserves the critical acoustic details. The article then names some specific foundational AI models, mostly developed by Google, that this Notebook LM system likely builds upon.
Right, things like SoundStream, Audio LM, Spear TS, and SoundStorm.
Exactly. SoundStream is noted as one of those neural audio codecs, focused on efficient compression and reconstruction. Audio LM is described as a model that applies language modeling principles to audio itself. It learns to predict subsequent sound sequences based on previous ones, which helps maintain both acoustic and semantic coherence over time.
Okay.
Spear TS is presented as a text-to-speech model that kind of approaches generating audio from text as a translation task, moving from text to semantic representation, then to acoustic representation, and finally generating the audio waveform.
And SoundStorm was highlighted as particularly relevant for this dialogue part.
Yes, SoundStorm is mentioned as a highly efficient audio generation model that uses what are called non-autoregressive techniques. Basically, this means it doesn't have to generate the audio strictly sequentially, like one tiny bit after another.
I can do more in parallel.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Which can make it much, much faster, especially for generating longer audio sequences. The Substack article posits that SoundStorm, or perhaps a significantly advanced version of it, is likely the core dialogue synthesis model responsible for converting that AI-generated script into the two-speaker audio conversation we hear in Notebook LM.
Okay, so pulling this all together then, what's the inferred process for creating an audio overview in Notebook LM based on all this technical speculation? How does it likely happen?
The likely process, as outlined in that article, probably starts when you upload your sources to Notebook LM. Then a large language model, almost certainly Gemini, given the product context and mentions, processes all that source material. This LLM is then prompted, probably quite cleverly, to generate a transcript, basically a script of a back-and-forth conversation between two speakers. And it's specifically styled to sound like a podcast, maybe with host and guest roles defined. And crucially, this script is entirely grounded in the content of your uploaded documents.
So step one, an LLM like Gemini reads your sources and actually writes the dialogue script for the podcast.
And that appears to be the critical first step, yes, generating the content of the conversation. Then step two. This generated dialogue transcript is fed into a separate, specialized dialogue synthesis model.
The Soundstorm-like model.
Based on the analysis, yes, this model is inferred to be a highly advanced version of something like Soundstorm. Its job is to take that text script and convert it into audio, actually performing the conversation using two distinct, consistent speaker identities throughout the entire dialogue.
So this specialized model doesn't just read the lines, it performs the conversation, assigning the right lines to the right voices and making sure they sound like the same two people talking naturally for the whole, say, 10-minute duration.
Exactly. And the article highlights some key advancements this Notebook LM capability seems to demonstrate compared to the methods described in earlier research papers, like the original Soundstorm work.
Such as?
For instance, it seems Notebook LM doesn't necessarily require an initial audio prompt, like a 3-second clip, to capture the speaker identity. It appears capable of maintaining consistent identities across longer dialogues, potentially just from the text script itself. It also handles much longer conversations than the 30-second limit mentioned for the original Soundstorm technique.
Okay, so it's a sophisticated pipeline. A powerful LLM synthesizes your source material into a conversational script, and then an advanced dialogue synthesis model transforms that script into highly realistic, consistent multi-speaker audio. It's building on state-of-the-art AI models, but definitely pushing them further for this specific dialogue generation task.
That appears to be the technical magic, if you will. The seamless integration of powerful language understanding and sophisticated audio generation, all tailored specifically for creating conversation.
Understanding the potential tech is fascinating, but let's bring it back to the listener. Why does this capability actually matter to you? What are the practical applications of Notebook LM, and especially this audio overview feature, out there in the real world? The sources suggested several pretty compelling use cases.
Education is definitely a major area highlighted. Think about students, right? Studying for exams, trying to get through dense assigned readings, maybe needing to review recorded lectures. You can upload your textbooks, your notes, lecture recordings, whatever, and then generate study guides or these audio overviews. And that interactive audio feature means you could literally talk with the material. Ask the AI host to explain concepts you're struggling with or summarize specific sections. It makes learning potentially much more active and accessible.
And that statistic we mentioned earlier about effective note-taking being linked to higher test scores, that feels particularly relevant here as these tools aim to make that whole note-taking and review process significantly more effective and versatile.
It really does. It enhances that core process of capturing and reviewing information by providing multiple pathways. You've got text summaries, structured notes, conversational audio, multiple ways to engage with the material, which could lead to better retention and understanding.
Research seems like another obvious fit.
Absolutely. For researchers, whether they're academic or in industry, this could be a really potent tool for managing and reviewing just huge volumes of literature.
Yeah.
You could upload dozens of research papers into a notebook and then use Notebook LM to get summaries, extract key findings across multiple papers, maybe even ask the AI to discuss the relationships between different studies. The audio overview could provide a really rapid way to grasp the core arguments of several papers without having to read every single word first.
Helping you prioritize where to focus your deep reading.
Exactly. Filtering the noise.
Uploading meeting notes or interview recordings must be incredibly useful too.
Definitely. Imagine uploading audio or video recordings of meetings or interviews or maybe focus groups. Notebook LM can generate searchable transcripts. You can then use it to summarize key action items, pull out specific quotes, review decisions made. It could free up participants from needing to take exhaustive notes during the session itself, knowing everything's captured and easily queryable afterwards.
What about for people creating content? Writers, maybe?
The sources suggest using it as a kind of brainstorming partner, grounded in your own research or ideas. So if you're writing an article or developing a presentation, maybe even working on a script, you could upload your background material and then use Notebook LM to help synthesize ideas, generate potential angles, or even structure arguments, all based directly on the information you've provided.
And just generally, making content more digestible and accessible seems like a broad benefit that covers a lot of situations.
It absolutely is. Converting long, complex documents or lengthy reports into concise summaries or these engaging audio formats just removes barriers to understanding. For anyone dealing with information that's dense or technical or simply very long, having a tool that can quickly provide a high-level overview or allow interaction via audio just makes that information far more accessible. As one source noted, all the general benefits we know about audio content like hands-free consumption, timestamps for navigation, variable playback speed, easy conversion to other formats for searchability and review, they're all brought together in a really powerful way by Notebook LM.
So from students trying to ace exams, to researchers tackling vast literature, busy professionals managing communication overload, and creators needing to synthesize information, the ability to quickly process and interact with knowledge in these new ways, particularly through this conversational audio feature, seems to have really wide-ranging practical applications.
It directly addresses that core problem. Too much information, too little time to process it effectively. And it offers distinct tools to try and cut through that noise and find the valuable insights within your own material.